Today I will make a commentary on Bertolt Brecht, the German playwright's play, The Good Person of Szechwan, or The Good Woman of Szechwan, which was written in 1943 and first performed in 1945. Now, this particular play, the 10 scenes in the play, are punctuated with songs which are meant to stand apart from the dialogue. And this particular technique by Brecht was called the separation of the elements, or namely his alienation effect or Verfremdungseffekt, which I will talk about in another video. Now, he used this technique in order to use different components of performance in such a way that they would interrupt one another rather than work in unison. Now, this particular play, that is The Good Person of Szechwan, presents a relatively simple dilemma, that being a good person and remaining able to support oneself are mutually incompatible in a capitalist society. Set in a fictional rural village in China, Brecht uses this didactic genre, the parable. You will see that it is known as a parable play. So he uses this parable to drive this point, or rather hammer the point home, when three gods visit Szechwan in search of a single good person. So the play starts with the introduction of three gods searching for a single good person. But unfortunately, the only person who provides them shelter, and therefore the only truly good person, is the female protagonist and prostitute, Shente. So the character's name is Shente, Shente, Shente. Now, after some debate about how to reward Shente for her kindness, the gods give her a considerable sum of money and leave her to her own devices. Now, she buys a tobacco store with that money given to her by the gods, but soon finds that it is not easy to remain good, because she quickly helps so many needy people that her new store is in danger of going bankrupt. So in order to keep her business afloat, Shente creates an alter ego. It is the same person, but now Shente creates an alter ego, and this alter ego poses as a very strict man named Shuita. Now, claiming that he is her cousin, she assumes his identity every time she needs to turn down someone in need. The fact that Shente and Shuita are the same person, who is played by the same actor, is revealed to the audience early on in the play. However, all but one of the characters are oblivious. The result of Brecht's Verfremdungseffekt, or the A effect, or the alienation effect, sometimes it is even called the estrangement effect. Now, what is this effect? It is an attempt to make strange, I'm repeating, it is a particular technique or a strategy applied to the theater, where it is an attempt to make strange the entire experience of watching theater. So instead of enchanting the audience through well integrated harmonious spectacles, Bertolt Brecht, the Marxist German playwright, set the components of theater in such as the components may be termed as, for example, music. We see many songs in this play. Music is one component. Then the particular design of the set. Then the suspense of the plots against one another. Why? In order to make the audience examine, reflect, and criticize. So the audience should not be passive, according to Brecht. The audience should also involve themselves in examination, reflection, or criticism. Very important. So the audience is not just a passive spectator who is under the hypnotic spell of the willing suspension of disbelief. But here, the audience will be alienated. So, as a result, Bertolt Brecht hoped that the audience would examine the characters and the situation, alright, and the situation objectively. So, this is a new kind of theatre which you are witnessing. Bertolt Brecht's Verfremdungseffekt. And Brecht is hoping that his audience would examine the characters and situation objectively so that the judgment it performs becomes a comment on the audience's own values. Now, Brecht was clearly very conscious of his audience. While his personal beliefs are known to have developed from those of Marxism, he was well aware that the world he lived in was also heavily influenced by Christian theodicy. Therefore, by using this didactic genre of a parable, his audience would have thought about the Bible and the stories in it, such as the parable of Rahab, a prostitute in Jericho who protects the Israelites and allows them to spend the night on her roof. So when Shente, the prostitute of Szechwan, takes the gods in, there seems to be some hope of mankind, and the gods supply her with money to begin a life that could lead to prosperity. Now, Brecht's Marxist anti-theodicy, however, impresses itself upon the morality of the play by promoting the idea that the capitalist system is the true cause of human suffering. Therefore, if Shente is to remain a good person, her business will be unable to prosper, because you cannot be a good person and you cannot be a good capitalist at the same point of time, because if you have to be a capitalist, you need to exploit the surplus labor of your workers, and from that extraction you are accumulating capital on which your investment relies upon. So this is what Brecht is trying to say, that it is impossible for Shente to remain a good woman or a good person if she wants to prosper as a businesswoman. Additionally, it is important to note that the respectable homes which the gods were previously turned away from by a comment of "keep your gods, have your own troubles," no less the gods accept this world has secularized and that people aren't just religious anymore. They're not religious anymore, and the gods equate goodness with religiosity, which is why their struggling quest for a good person leads them to believe that people are no longer religious. And while the gods, that is the play's personification of the sacred, the gods are basically Brecht's personification of what is sacred, which stands opposing the profane, had hoped to find goodness, charity, honesty amongst the people of Szechwan. Now, they instead they wanted to find goodness, they wanted to find charity, they wanted to find honesty, but what they encounter is people who seem to lack any redeeming qualities, and as a result, the gods clearly have less validity, less influence, and less significance in this secularized Szechwan society. So, consequently, the good person of Szechwan or the good woman of Szechwan as a play can be interpreted as relating to Brian Wilson's demoralization of society, through which the societal system relies less on people being good and more on their being calculable, accountable. Now, this is seen throughout the play by the characters' selfishness, individualism, poor manners, and willingness to commit crimes. Furthermore, these expectations abide by the late modern risk or trust dialectic in which societies have a decreased ability to finding an abiding sense of security in the routines of everyday human life and take for granted assumptions about the way things are and about the way things should be. So, how does the play conclude now? The play concludes with the gods urging this Shente to continue to be good, and not only are the gods portrayed as fallible beings, but they are also to the point of comic value, portrayed as what the French would say, les incompetents. They are so out of touch with the world that Wong, who is Wong, the person who we meet as the water seller, remember the first scene, is immediately able to identify them as men who have never worked the hard labor required for the working class of Szechwan. And the gods' abandonment of their people is reminiscent of the abandonment of Brecht society felt following the revelations made by Newton, Darwin, and Freud, who had practically demolished the concept of God. You cannot believe in the concept of God after the theories of Newton, Darwin, Freud, Marx, Bakunin, and the other, for example, the neo-atheists too, for example, Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens. Now, it is this frustrating ending. So the ending is very frustrating. Don't be surprised. Don't expect a very happy ending in Brecht's play. So, it is this frustrating ending that prepares the audience to respond when the epilogue asks. If the epilogue is asking a question, what are the questions? The questions are, how could a better ending be arranged? Could one change people? These are the questions which we are asking. Can the world be changed? Would new gods do the trick? Will atheism, moral rearmament, materialism? It is for us to find out. There's got to be a way. That is what the message is. So, Bertolt Brecht views this bourgeois capitalist world as evil and in need of change. And the gods falsify the results of their experiment by declaring that their search for a good person has been successful. So while Shente helplessly begs for advice on how to be good, the gods ascend back to heaven. And the experiment was not, however, concluded so easily in the eyes of Shente or her audience. The ending shifts the play's point of interest from the events on stage to the audience, who, unlike the gods, are only onlookers, and they have the power to enact a revolutionary change and make a difference in the world. And it is in this way that Brecht's play is a critique on capitalist society.